Back in Rembrandt's time is about Black people in Dutch art of the 17th century, an important exhibition about appreciation and recognition in the Rembrandt House Museum in Amsterdam. The exhibition shows that there were many Black people who were represented in 17th century Dutch art, especially between 1620 and 1660. And not only as servants of the white elite, as you might expect, Black people appear in many different roles and are often represented from life, true to life and recognizable as individuals. This yields a range of portraits of 17th century Black people. We have brought them together from all over Europe. But why were so many impressive portraits of Black people made in the period between 1620 and 1660? In so many different roles? In this exhibition, we present the three main reasons. 1. Artists worked from life. 2. More Black people came to the Netherlands. 3. The image of Black people was not yet completely determined by slavery. Let's look at each of these, one at a time. Painting what you see. This was an important principle for Rembrandt and his contemporaries. Not from the imagination, but from real life. This new way of working required that one made many studies of life, also of Black people, in various media, ink, chalk, paint, clay, and on the etching plate. Rembrandt is known for his spontaneous figure studies, such as this quick sketch of a standing African man. Rembrandt possibly encountered him on the street in Amsterdam, probably right in his own neighborhood. This is namely the second reason why we have so many more portraits of Black people in the 17th century. They were here, in Amsterdam, and posed as models for artists. They came as sailors from Africa or Brazil, or as servants of Jewish immigrants from Portugal, and established themselves in the area of John Breestraat, right in Rembrandt's neighborhood. Between 1620 and 1660, around 100 Black people lived in Amsterdam. In a population of 100,000, this is not much, but they formed a tight-knit community and were noticed. We see Black people in artworks featuring street life in Amsterdam as well. For example, here on the Dam, among all the people, one Black person in the foreground right by the fish stand. We also have archival documents from the Amsterdam Municipal Archive, important sources for our knowledge of 17th century Afro-Amsterdammers. In these documents, for example, you will find Lijsbeth Pieters from Angola and Pieter Klaus Bruinen, who came from Brazil. These are only slivers of information, but they are here. This book registers the baptism in the Catholic hidden church Moses and Aaron in the Jodenbreestraat. Pieter Klaus Bruin and Lisbeth Pieters are mentioned several times as witness of the baptism of Afro-Amsterdam children. Clearly, this couple played an important role in the Black community in the neighborhood. And then the third reason for the existence of so many non-stereotypical images of Black people in the 17th century. The image of Black people was not yet completely determined by slavery, as it would be later. Slavery was forbidden in the Netherlands, but the colony that it had in Brazil ran on it. For the sake of profit, people were brought from Africa in slavery to work on the sugar plantations. A horrible fate. But you notice virtually nothing of this in the images of the colony. Take this map, for instance. It shows the coastline of part of the colony. To the upper right, a sugar mill where enslaved people from Africa were working, with no sign of harsh oversight and blows of the rod that went along with it. To the left, they even dance and make music. It was only toward the end of the 17th century that imagery of Africans becomes more negative. Black people are sometimes represented as cannibals, half-beasts. Such images were used to legitimize slavery. At the beginning of the 17th century, it had not yet come this far. In Holland, the attitude toward Black people was more neutral. We observe this in the second gallery of the exhibition, a gallery of honor of portraits of Black people. The artworks are divided into 3 categories: stories, portraits, and tronies. Artists often incorporated their studies of Black people into other works of art, in representations of stories from the Bible or classical mythology, for example. There are a number of biblical stories in which Africans play the leading role. For example, the adoration of the Magi and the baptism of the eunuch. The Ethiopian chamberlain was converted to Christianity by Philip the Evangelist. A youth stands holding his lavish clothing. Rembrandt depicted this story more often, especially in his younger years. Later, many more Black people appear in Rembrandt's artworks. He places Black people among the spectators of biblical scenes, for instance. Here, it is as a young man to the left, leaning on a wall. He looks straight out to us. With such figures, Rembrandt indicates that the Roman Empire, in which these biblical scenes take place, was large and had a diverse population. Also in the 17th century portraits, Black people appear. Only a few times as the main person, more often as the servant of white elites, such as here. A Black servant in the middle of a Dutch family. He has a prominent location, a little to the back, but at the same time right in the middle. Clearly, he had an important role in the household. One striking aspect, his face is painted much better than the others in the painting. They were reworked later. Unfortunately, we rarely know who the Black people in the artworks are. But there is one exception: these 3 men. They are Don Miguel de Castro and his servants Diego Bemba and Pedro Sonda. Don Miguel was ambassador of Sonio. This was part of the Congo that wanted to secede. The Dutch and the rules of Congo carried out trade in gold and ivory, but above all, in people. This makes Don Miguel a controversial figure. Don Miguel came to the Netherlands to plead his case and had his portrait painted during his stay in Middelburg. Don Miguel de Castro makes a serious and forceful impression, but then he also belonged to Congo's elite. The high point of the exhibition is formed by the so-called tronies. These are the representations of the head. Usually someone posed as a model for such a tronie, but the artist then added fantasy costume and attributes. The model could thus be transformed into an Oriental with a turban. Black people also posed for tronies. They then stand in the middle of the picture and are the center of attention. A beautiful example of this tronie by Gerrit Douw, Rembrandt's first pupil. Turban, feather, earrings. These tronies show that people in the Netherlands between 1620 and 1660 did not immediately link Black people to transatlantic slavery. They much sooner associated Black people to someone from the Mediterranean world. North Africa, Egypt, and the land of the Bible loomed much larger than West Africa and Brazil. The most striking painting in this row, King Caspar by Hendrik Hirschop. Hirschop is a fairly unknown follower of Rembrandt, who did make one masterpiece, this entirely original work of art. Here it all comes together, because even though we do not know who posed as the model, this man is presented as an individual person. Many people recognize someone in him, a family member or a neighbor. You could imagine running into him on the street today. In 17th century works of art, we see Black people through the eyes of white artists, and we do not know who the models were. In recent years, much has changed. Today, there are many Black artists who reflect on their own identity, reality, and environment. 10 of them present their work in this exhibition, including Iris Kensmil. In her portraits, Kensmil draws attention to Black people who have played important roles in history, such as Hermina Housvat. She was a political activist who campaigned for the independence of Suriname. Kensmil portrays her in a large format, as befits a historical figure. With these works, this exhibition demonstrates that Black people are present, here, in society and in art. now, in the present time, but also then, in the 17th century.